It's a story about my mom. Um, I don't know what happened, but she had a brush with death, and this was I think it's a story of somebody who died well, and I'm not sure how it was all orchestrated. We never really are, but she certainly did some things to help, and it definitely looked like she was on her way out. And the doctor had come and signed the death certificate, and we had gathered all her 7 kids and all her grandchildren. We took her home from the hospital. She knew that she needed, she needed to go, and she wanted to do it with the doctor in the at home, and allow that to happen. That's what her family did. That's what her dad did, her mom did. She wanted to honor that tradition. So I don't know. Fast forward 2 years, she lived another 2 years. She died so well. She was literally describing what it was like on the other side. And you read about these things in the near-death experiences, the same sort of metaphors and symbols and experiences that people have. But she came back and she lived for another 2 years. I think she's so bloody Irish, like I am. It was just a great party that everybody had, and everybody told her how wonderful she was and what a difference she made in their life. And so she said, well, if that's the kind of difference I can make, maybe I got a few more ounces of living in me. So she came back and lived for another 2 years really fully. But then again, this death came knocking on her door, and she was in the hospital, and she looked at me and she said, okay, I'm definitely ready to go this time around. And so we took her home and we gathered around, and a smaller gathering. And she said to me, she said, well, okay, so I gave birth to 7 of you, but I don't know how to do the other end of things, which is to die. Can you help me out here? And she had met one of my teachers who was very much involved in the HIV virus and AIDS back in the 80, 85, 86, 80, and the early 90s. We were on the front line looking after and helping some of these men, mostly men, die consciously and die well. Conscious dying, we taught them how to do that, and sometimes prolonged lives so that they could finish up some of their work and the unfinished business in their lifetime and in this lifetime. And so Donald had worked a lot, and he had worked a lot with helping people at that end, helping doctors deal with that, the amount of death, helping individuals to do some unfinished work, really just supporting people. And so my mom remembered when she came out of hospital, she said, do you think Donald might be a help? And so I have a good relationship with Donald, and I went and talked to him, and of course, and he said, well, you gotta do 3 things. And I did these 3 things in one day with my mom. And he said, and she said, well, is this, she looked at me and laughed, and she goes, is this to get me better, or is this to help me die? And I said, I don't know. And we both started laughing. I mean, belly laughing. But suffice to say, 2 days later, at home, surrounded by family, she left. And it was beautiful. It was really beautiful. And we got to bathe her, wash her body. And so, and did all the rituals we need after that to have lots of time to grieve and cry and say goodbye and unpack certain things that we wanted and distribute things that we definitely didn't need and things like that. So I just say that as an example of somebody who died well, and that by way of saying that not all of us get a chance to die like that. Some of us are hit by a car. Some of us die on chemotherapy and radiation with very little vitality left in our life, and it doesn't happen. Some of us end up, with heroin overdose, and it doesn't end well. I know that. I'm fully aware of that. And so to say that we're very fortunate is a very it is an understatement for me to be standing here talking to you. feel blessed to be able to do that. And so so can I take that story and bring that into the teachings of the cocoon? Wow, just maybe we can just pause. I'm feeling that grief. I don't think it's just my mom. I just think probably for a lot of people right now. But bear with me. The tears will come and go. And so, yeah, perhaps now it's a good time to be talking about these cocoon wisdom because I think there's probably going to be some more closer to home letting go of realities that we're leaving behind. That normal life is, whether it be physical, financial, job wise, whether it be having an office to go to, whether it be that we don't have the health, the robustness, the grit to be able to survive this, or we know somebody very close to us. But we're going to, part of the cocoon wisdom is learning how to grieve well, and how to die well, how to let go well, how to detach compassionately. And maybe that's what the tears are about, is learning that, is showing me this is how I need to do that, and maybe the grief for me has arrived. I know for other people in my office it has arrived. So the first teaching, the first teaching of the cocoon is really, if you remember from last week, we're now left the ordinary world, and we're now entering into the cocoon phase, that pupae phase. All of us has died down, and the caterpillar we're now a sac hanging from a branch. We're in the goo, and most people are not familiar on how to be in the goo, and or be with themselves, or be in the back 40. So there's a huge spiritual teaching, I think, for the whole world. If we have a home, if we can find a place for us to rest, hang our hat, that we can start to learn how it is that we can detach from things. There's a tool I want to tell you about that will really help around how it is that we can detach from the familiar in a way that's very honorable, and in a way that's leads to some other kinds of letting go and ritual and ceremony that we can all do to facilitate the grief not getting all backed up and stuck in here, which can create a little bit of havoc, as we all know. So the first cocoon wisdom teaching is learning how to die well, learning how that we can actually be okay with not doing. And not doing could be on one end of the continuum, the other end of the continuum, whereas we are physically having to let go, or we are now dying, we are now leaving this world. In traditional peoples around the world, they talk about learning to die before you die. Long before we get here, we need to learn to die well all the way along. So by the time this comes, our final, when we do put this body 6 feet under or cremate it, and we have had a chance to know, understand, and physically grieve and let go and detach from this body, from our relationships, from our, just saying it out loud is just really, we're in that, I'm in that grief, beginning of that. So dying well means being willing to let go now. Dying well means really tending to the details of things that no longer are with us. There's a lot of, the idea of the cocoon teachings, the cocoon wisdom is is said beautifully when it's befriending the necessity of death. Befriending the necessity of death. Things have to die for the rebirth to come. We know that in nature, life is death and rebirth. It's nothing but that. However, we don't do a good job of bumping into death and working with it. So things that are going, we need to fully acknowledge. You know, we need to say that, okay, that is going, and what do we need to do to allow that to go? You know, it can be the business like it was, is on its way out. It could be the old relationship, the marriage is gone. It could be there's a second chapter in the marriage. It could be that there's a second chapter in the business. It could be there's a second chapter in our health. But if we die really well, we go wholeheartedly into the cocoon, and we are going to sit down in there, and we're going to sit in that stillness, and we're going to allow our minds to die, our ideas to die, our feelings, like we're going to allow everything to just settle and settle and settle. It's like we got, like we gotta. If I could show you, it's like we just need to completely let this whole, and this body especially, go. And why meditation and yoga before the Shavasana, Shiva asana is the death asana, is the dying. So the idea then to do nothing, but there's no such thing as doing nothing. You're either being nothing or you're doing nothing. Okay, I'm really doing nothing. I'm really doing nothing. No. The idea is to learn now how to, the teachings, the wisdom is us learning now to let go. And we are being taught this all around the world. So Caterpillar is showing us that we're dying. Now we're in the sack. Let's get into the sack and rest into it. And it turns out that unknown is also the place that you know, when we can let go into that emptiness, into that darkness, into that goo, that is the best place where we become full. I want to say that again. This is such a profound teaching. If we can allow for us to be in this goo, really allow ourselves to be emptied out, you know, we then invite the rebirth of fulfillment to fill us up. So dying well means also to not wash quickly over a grief moment, a sad moment, a letting go. It's to really honor and be respectful of the things that are going, and give them a proper due course of a burial, proper due course of a ritual, proper due course of honoring them, acknowledging them fully. I'm proud to say it came from the Irish tradition of the wake, which is 3 days of telling stories and eating and drinking and more stories and eating and drinking. And it was just a great chance for all the layers to come out of that person's life, how they touched us. It's how we remember, right? We remember then our lives, you know, by putting other members in. We bring other members into our village if we do this well, because there is the rebirth. There's always the rebirth. The teachings of death are rebirth. The teachings of death are rebirth and the full cycle of life, understanding the full cycle of life. So you guys got this. I understand you have that. So dying well is the first teaching. Can we just pause there because that we could talk for 3.5 years about what that means to die well, going into the desert to die well, and a conscious vision fast, going into our meditation hut. The hut practice is about dying well every day. It's learning to die every day. This is a good day to die, say a lot of people from around the world who live in indigenous cultures and have literal hut practices. There's something gritty about the word hut for me, and I like it because it involves, like, yeah, it's not pretty sometimes. The tears come, the sweat comes, Sometimes we have to yell and scream to get the anger out of us before we can let that go of what our dad did, or what, what our wife did, or what our husband did. And it's getting this stuff done. It's getting this stuff done. The second teaching about that the cocoon can teach us, there are many more than three, but the second one for me that I want to highlight, that you know about, is that we have an opportunity to move our wounds into a womb. And a womb gives birth. Our wounds can be transmuted. That's what happens in the cocoon. Mush at the beginning, it's just the vestiges and the leftover and the artifacts of whatever the liver was of the caterpillar, and the heart and the brains and the hormones, and it's just a whole pile of mush. But that mush and that wound, those wounding, that old woundings can then turn into a womb. It's what actually happens if we're willing to sit still, if we're willing to sit down into this. But if not, if we're going to sit down and we go, I'm getting all dirty. I'm not, I can't sit down in that. I can't, that's not mine. It's gritty. It's blood, sweat, and tears kind of stuff. A hot practice is anyway. A dying practice is. Because you got to get stuff out of your system. Like you want to grieve. You're grieving. When you're grieving, you are just honoring. You're doing ceremony on what, that's like praise to what used to be there. My uncle who died in Ireland recently, we went back for a wake, and we yelling and screaming and weeping with tears. But we were also singing and dancing and having a shot of Irish whiskey for sure. So if we do this well, we go from the dying, the cocoon, within the cocoon, it goes from the goo just sort of landing to now all of a sudden it can, within that, turns into a womb that can give birth to, guess what? Yes, a butterfly. That you remember had pigments of a tiny little pigment of red that was now going to be a big splash of red on the wing. It was going to be like a little gift that you had. Now all of a sudden you're fully expressing that in the wing, but not if you don't do the middle cocooning really well. So we need to die well. We need to, first thing. The second thing is if we do this well, if we really sit down into it, and I'm going to give you some nuts and bolts of how to do that. If we do this really well, then we also then will turn our wound into a womb that gives birth. You guys got this. Third thing I want to just fling at you is that when we allow ourselves to be in that, and the key word is allow, what happens is that we make possible the butterfly just to happen on its own. Like in other words, our completeness, our wholeness, our already wakeful state, that we are our wakeful being, our natural state, who we genuinely are, becomes fully expressed. It becomes fully expressed in the butterfly, if we allow it. Otherwise, if we don't allow what needs to emerge, if we don't allow what to come out of the womb, we don't allow the baby to just be born, to grow and be born in that 9 months. It might be 2 months, it might be 9 days, it might be 9 seconds, I don't know what it is. But if we don't allow the womb to give birth to what it needs to give birth to, we can truncate the whole process, and we can abort the whole process, and we can jump out way too quickly. So we need patience. And what 9 months does for an embryo, 40 early mornings will do for your gradual growing wholeness. This is the stage that we're in, that we're all cocooning. The cocoon says what 9 months has done for an embryo, 40 early mornings will do for your gradual growing wholeness. We need to be patient with a large work, like a universe. And a butterfly from a caterpillar or from a pile of goo is a huge universe. It's a huge transformation. This inhaling walking around on to a butterfly that's pollinating and cross-pollinating and basically doing a tremendous work, saving the planet, but bringing a lot of joy and love and rain. That's what a rainmaker does, becomes that butterfly, becomes that person. Not Pollyanna, we're not talking about, no, somebody who's grounded, heart is open, head is clear, and goes and gets the job done that needs to get done. A true mentor, right? A good storyteller. You've met them. Could be a good butcher, baker, candlestick maker too. So the last teaching is about allowing the gestation, allowing, like not pulling on the seed too quickly. You don't plant a whole bunch of seeds in a beautiful fertile soil, and then you end up, every morning you're looking. Are you done? Are you done? Are you done? You know that story. We're not doing that. We're allowing things to gestate, to have that time. Patience with a large work. A new moon teaches deliberation and gradualness. What 9 months does for an embryo, 40 early mornings will do for your gradual growing wholeness. Just need to pause here. Yeah. Dying well. Dying well. Womb to womb. Patience with a large work, like the butterfly that's in you, people. It's going to come out. We need to find a way to make ourselves safe. It's hard work for a lot of us. We don't have a home that we can rely on and relax into. We don't have a lot of people that have our backs. We need to find a way anyway. We need to find a way somehow. The government's being generous. We're going to beg, borrow, and steal, use the old Irish tools. We're going to do what we need to do, but we need to honor this thing that's starting to cook inside of us.